Hello. Good evening. Hi, guys.
Hi.
It is Wednesday. I can't believe it's already May. It's May 5th. I was kind of hoping we were going to go live on May 4th so we could all wear our Star Wars costumes, but alas, here we are on May 5th. Of course, I'm Sam, and I'm here representing Truro Buzz. And we have with us tonight Stacey Henderson from the Colchester East Hants Hospice Society and Susan Henderson from the Colchester East Hants Canadian Mental Health Association. Hi, ladies.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, so glad to have you guys both here with us. Hi, Sylvia. Having this conversation, we're in the middle of another shutdown for our province. And of course, the organizations that you guys both work with are heavily involved behind the scenes in terms of managing or helping to manage people's mental wellness and dealing with loss and grief. And we're going to get to some of those topics that nobody seems to want to talk about shortly, but I do just want to remind folks who are watching to sign up for the Truro Buzz newsletter. If you go to trurobuzz.com, you can go on there, and despite a lot of events shutting down and things like that, we are still sending out newsletters with tips and tricks and exercise routines and all kinds of good resources that you can use as you're kind of trying to manage staying home right now. And also, if you guys, I don't know, Stacey and Susan, if you had heard this, but where Alicia was nominated for Woman of the Year through the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So that campaign is still happening. And, Nala's watching, Stace, your doggo. I love it. Awesome. The Man and Woman of the Year campaign runs until June 3rd, and there's all kinds of ways that you can contribute to that cause. If you go to the Truro Buzz website or Facebook page, you can get linked to it, and you can also go to mwoy.ca and track Alicia down and see all of the amazing partners that come to help support her. So feel free, guys, to do that and help support the great cause. And I think that's all for me on that. Without further ado, let's chat about your amazing organizations, guys, because like I said, you're in the thick of the pandemic, just like everybody else. So, when you guys decided to kind of join forces this year, it was going to be to host a mutual event, which was going to be hosted today, which would have been at much time to kind of have a conversation about some of these topics that are there in the back of everyone's minds, but maybe some people are hesitant to talk about. So what was the impetus, I guess, for you guys to kind of join forces? Maybe we'll start with you, Stacey.
Yeah, it's just a natural collaboration. I think grief has always traditionally been under the mental health and addictions umbrella just until the past couple of years, when we tried to fill in that for Colchester East Hants. So natural partnership for sure. I know, Susan, we had an opportunity to brainstorm a little bit about what we could do, and obviously not only from the personal relationship locally, but also from a national level. It's everything falls on the same week. So again, it just seemed like a natural fit to come together and offer something out on topics that, like you said, not many people are open and comfortable talking about. So I thought that was, from our perspective in this organization, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
To add there, Susan?
Well, we know how to clear a room. Stacey and I do. All we have to do is bring up what our organization is talking about. I think it's probably better now, but I always remember doing a mental health lunch and learn, and I had no one sign up. Because it is a difficult topic to speak about without shame and embarrassment. There's so much stigma involved. No one wants to know we're not coping. We don't want to present the viewpoint that we're not coping well, or we don't have the skill sets to cope well. For some reason, it seems to mean there's something wrong with us. But of course, Stacey and I are here to dispel that. But we had actually got together to talk about training, and then realized that we were working on the same week. And both Stacey and I are very collaborative. We believe there's enough work for all of us in this community, and we're better together. Yeah, and we had actually talked, like I said, about some training so that we could sort of mutually support each other, because topics do come up, both of those topics typically in conversation. So, yeah.
And Susan made a really Yeah, sorry, Susan made a really good point too, and not only from an organizational standpoint, but our own teams. That's what I really liked about the training is, I mean, we're part of the community. We're all dealing with our families and COVID and all those restrictions that just reaching out and having the two teams to come together, I think was another layer that I think was a pretty important piece of all that. So
yeah, definitely. Even just in the short time, we haven't even actually at the training yet. Darn COVID keeps getting in the way. It keeps postponing it. But even just having the conversation, we realize there are supports and services. For example, if there's a family that is going to hospice and we find out they're struggling. I mean, oftentimes grief, there's a loss of financial, there's a disruption of financial security of some kind. So people are struggling with, foods insecurity and all kinds of different things. Well, there's probably some things we can do to help out there, at least even temporarily. So just even having a referral relationship, I think is going to be, very beneficial for all of us. And of course, very beneficial, maximum beneficial for the people we're supporting, which is the most important thing.
Because there's just so much crossover, like you guys are saying. I mean, you can't, especially in a small community like this, you can't operate in a silo in terms of, what topics or what issues, I guess, for lack of a better word, you want to focus on. So that crossover and seeing two organizations, for me as an outsider, seeing these two organizations working together, I think just looks like such a great partnership from a community perspective too.
Yeah, it does involve trust. We'll be honest. We're talking about things that are a little bit hard to talk about today because, people get concerned about, I don't want to use the word territorial, it's a pretty strong word, but you get worried about your organization's sustainability. And sometimes it feels like if you give up a piece of that you're not going to get that piece back. But yeah, we all know that that's when you can develop a trusting relationship. We all know that, it'll make both organizations much better for sure.
And I think the other thing is it's almost pooling all the resources, right? Not only from, a labor standpoint and those resources, but just playing off and, making things better. And like I said, none of us can do it perfectly on our own, and just being able to pool those resources. And there's, even with COVID, if we're just talking about the past year, there's been grant opportunities and some funding opportunities that overlap that allow us to make things stronger and better and more of it moving forward once public health restrictions, are lifted a little bit. So I think it's all those things that you don't realize when you apply for a grant, how much it overlaps and how much better you can be together. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the idea behind the event today was we were going to have lunch. We were going to eat under the farmer's market canopy. And you guys were also promoting, I mean, obviously you were going to have your staff there and have resources and things to talk about, but you were also going to recommend getting outside and going for a short walk on your break, kind of moving your body, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it. What was the purpose for you guys in incorporating that piece into today's event? That of course didn't happen, but we can still encourage that today. Susan, do you want to start with that?
Well, sure. I mean, as you say, Sam, movement and mental health is, especially right now. I mean, even Dr. Strang and Premier Rankin are saying on their briefings, get outside. It's important for your mental health, and trying to preserve what they can in terms of the restrictions or lack of restrictions around things like parks and walking trails, but don't gather. So it's kind of whereas last time I don't think we were allowed to go to a park. I remember people getting fined and penalized for that. So getting outside is just it's just so good for mental health. I'm a big proponent of it. In fact, I went for a walk this afternoon at lunch hour, and we were doing some gardening here. I said, let's all get outside, and the staff we went out and did some gardening, and yeah, it was wonderful. There's something about being outside. I think there's just looking up and hearing the birds and, a sense of something bigger than yourself. I think there's a mindfulness component that starts creeping into that. You hear again the bird songs and you think, oh, what kind of bird is that? And it distracts you. Thinking about flowers, people having a conversation about that. There's, it's just, it's good to get out and get the mind off of the problems of today. If I can sit at my desk and I can just continue to be absorbed by the worry and the anxiety that all of this stuff brings us, or I can take a break from that. And I find if I'm feeling overwhelmed before lunch, if I go even for a 15-minute walk, I just feel so much better. It's incredible. You mentioned Sylvie earlier. We saw her actually, her and Finn going for a walk, and Finn was checking out all our positivity signs along the walk. It was really cute. So, again, just that distraction, a cute dog, and, saying hi to a friend that you haven't seen in a while. Yeah, that's what it is for me anyway.
It's funny how easily you forget how easy it is, if that makes sense. Like, you sort of, as you're, like you said, sitting at your desk and all of these crazy thoughts keep rolling through your head, and, notifications are popping out at you. You don't realize how easily and how much time you actually do have to just take those 15 minutes, and you'll be refreshed and better in the end when you go back after that break. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a sense too, you don't want to forget about things. Like, I always worry about that if I leave the situation, I'm going to forget about the intensity of it. No, you don't. And in fact, let's forget about the intensity, because I need to let go of that. And I need to let my body relax. I think it's changing the way that it's moving around, or what I'm doing with my body as well. So instead of sitting, it's now moving in a different way, and I'm breathing differently, and all kinds of good stuff.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And same for you, Stacey. I know you're a gardener too.
Yeah. And all of what Susan said, but I think the other thing was we were trying to find something, because a lot of people are intimidated for obvious reasons, COVID, but also just the topics of coming into our buildings. There's a sense of a bit of intimidation, I think, and people are open to sharing the unknown, and is it going to be accepting? So I think just being outside, it did create that safe and accessible space. It was green. It was, it's spring. We were hoping for good weather, healthy lunch, and all those components put together, but have it just a bit informal and feel safe. And you get to put names to faces of the teams and talk about anything. And you hope at some point, we might get down to the nuggets of what they, what information they wanted from either organization. But it was just that casual, informal setting that we wanted to create.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and when you're walking, you can bring up harder topics. I think it's almost like I always said when I used to work with teenagers and take them for a drive. I mean, this is way before for COVID times, of course, but it's like something about your eyes are on the road. You don't have to look at each other. The conversation seems easier, and I think walking is the same way. You're looking ahead rather than at the person. Maybe there's that lack of eye contact makes people feel a little bit more comfortable to talk about those difficult things.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that for sure. And it's interesting because, like, I'm sitting here and me, I'm pretty open about my feelings. I don't think anybody ever worries about me not talking about how I feel, if you know me. But, I struggle to even get on this call, to be truthful, because, it's been a heavy week, I think, for a lot of people. I think everybody's sort of feeling the weight of the daily briefings and the caseloads, and seeing a couple of reported deaths yesterday from COVID. And again, it's almost like we were in fight or flight mode this time last year, because it was something we never experienced before, and so we were kind of like coming up with creative ideas to manage it. And now I feel like exhaustion has kind of taken over, and it's harder to get that energy back up to try to come up with more creative ideas to cope.
Yeah, definitely. I'll jump in there, Sam, and I'll share as well. I've found this particular third or second wave, or whatever the heck it is, much more difficult this year. The things that bring me, joy and contentment, I have to do them maybe 3 times now versus the one time. It's like that feeling is stronger and more intense. I don't know if it was because we did those things and then we're still kind of safe. We felt a little bit safe because it wasn't really in Nova Scotia, and we could kind of protect ourselves from the worry of like what if one of my loved one passes away, and now that's a real potential reality if we don't get this thing in gear. So, or, at least it's someone I know that I'm touched by a death is someone that I know through this. So it seems so much more serious, so much heavier. And that briefing yesterday when they announced those 2 deaths was really, really sobering, if I can put it that way. Yeah, I was whining about not being able to go to my cottage, and that stopped pretty fast when you realize there are two families that are dealing with, and many more, of course. But yeah, that this is a serious thing we need to pay attention to. So I think that, yeah, a lot of people are probably feeling as I am, and probably worse. And then the usual things that you do aren't just, they're not helping. So I'm doing everything 3 times. So, and it is working, but yeah, it's
like
certainly
that.
deliberate.
I like that, because you're being more patient with some of those tools that you use to get through things. You're being a bit more patient with them. If it doesn't work the first or second time, try it a third time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Susan Peggy. We love you too.
Yeah, I think one of the things I remember the first of the week I dropped Null off at daycare, and I remember going in and saying to her when I dropped her off, I wish at some point in the near future that I can get as excited and carefree as dropping Nala off at daycare, because it is so heavy. You're not feeling those extreme emotions, good or bad. It's that freeze mode that you talked about in the blog. You don't know, you can't plan for tomorrow. You know what, you're relying on what those numbers look like for, personal plans for the summer. And then you just have to step back, go, you know what, there's so many people that have died through COVID, and their lives aren't being able to be celebrated because of the restrictions and what it means for their families. And it's heartbreaking, and it gets really, really heavy and like Susan says, you've got to try to pull yourself back a little bit, because you've got to come out stronger, because these folks are dealing with, so much greater things that you need that to be that support. And not only support, but you got to do it virtually for these heavy topics. So it's tough. Yeah, for a lot of folks, for sure.
It really is. And, we can all talk about it, and that's really great. And I think that obviously that's what we would have been doing at the event today, but hopefully with the new restrictions, people are still reaching out to folks and still saying, I get in the habit though of, the more I say it, the more I think, holy, like, are people getting sick of hearing me say these things too? Like, so I hope people aren't taking that and like choosing not to say it because they're just sort of feeling like that broken record, or feeling like Debbie Downer. I think I said that to you today. Like, you just sort of, we still need to be reaching out and having those conversations, because now more than ever, I feel like.
One of the things we're finding is, and it's a common word, which is really interesting. Like when Jane and Laura do, visits, and they were able to do it face to face for a short period of time, but the common word is lighter. People just want a space that's a bit, it's safe, and they can share, and just to be reassured what they're feeling is normal, and it's not, individual to them. And I think that's the most important piece. None of us can make anything go away, but if you can create that space that they are open and feel safe to open up about it, and they can walk away feeling a little bit lighter, I think that's the goal. It's not, we're not changing the world, but we're going to do it one step at a time. And if someone could, walk away feeling a little bit lighter, and what they're going through is a bit more normal, then I take that as a win.
Yeah. I think people have a sense too now of sort of slipping away, like that they're losing it. They're sort of secretly losing it and losing control of their mental health, and that, we're going to wake up tomorrow and I'm, seriously impacted by some sort of mental health issue that comes out at the end of all this. So yeah, so that's what Stacey's saying, so important that people are able to kind of, even though they're frightened, talk about that and talk about what might be happening. I can't imagine dealing with a death in all of this right now, and what that might do to, your lack of sleep and your sense of security. Like, our foundation right now is being pretty shaken. I can't imagine having to deal with that as well. And I mean, here comes Mom's Day, right? Yeah, here comes Mom's Day. And it's a hard day for a lot of people. Yes, we celebrate moms, but as you put in your recent article, which was lovely on hospice, I shared it as well, around, there's also a lot of us that are missing their moms. I'm very fortunate. I still have my mom in my life, but I can't be with her. But I'll take the silver lining in that one for next year. But yes, there's that has to be acknowledged as well.
Yeah, as somebody grieving her mom, I thought that would be the worst thing about this week. But, you just, in today's world, we know more than ever how each day is just going to be so much different. Like, we just don't have a sweet clue. And we never did, but we always had sort of that. I don't know. I always felt like maybe we felt like we had a bit more control over things than we did, but now we just know there's no way to control what's gonna happen or what's gonna come.
It's extremely unpredictable. I mean, and I think our brain wants to try to make well, it does. Scientifically, it always wants to make patterns out of things. How the heck do you make a pattern out of this? There's no predictability. There's no. I mean, every day is so different, and I think that's extremely stressful for people, and it's hard to regroup and get yourself back on sort of where you think it's so interesting. We're talking a lot about resilience, and Stacey and I actually attended this great workshop together, around resiliency and burnout. And but resiliency means typically sort of bouncing back to where things were. I don't know that we're going to be able to do that. I think this time has had such an effect on our emotions, and even just the recognition that mental health and grief are part of our everyday lives now, probably a bigger ball than we've been carrying before. But yeah, like things are not going to be the same, or there's certainly a sense that they're not going to be the same, or there's a worry. And so, yeah, when are we going to get back to what we had? Maybe never. And what's the grief around all those things, right?
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I just want to hop into the comments here. Sylvia says it's beginning to touch us. Yes, it's too close to home. And she's reiterating exactly what we were saying. You need to rely even more on walks in the park, quiet time in nature, even if it's just a cup of coffee in your backyard. 100%. It's those little things that we need to find and focus on to make sure we're taking care of our mental health, for sure.
Absolutely.
Susan says connection is key. Absolutely. And Alicia says, thank goodness for amazing resources. Well, that's the thing, you guys, Hospice and CMHA, that people have these resources in our community that they can go to, I think is key. Do you think people know that? Do you think they know how to find you guys?
You go, Stacey.
I'm gonna say no to a certain extent. I think for hospice, and I'll speak to our organization, unless you've been touched by it, I think there's about it, and you've been through and what resources, and you've liked the Facebook page and you follow us that way. But if you haven't, I think it's one of those things that talking about death and kind of advanced care planning and all those pieces that they attribute to that is just like, so it is hard. And I think we were just making a little bit of headway pre-COVID. And then when things started to shut down and you weren't able to make those presentations to organizations and you weren't able to do, grief groups, I think it's certainly made a difference, because I think people do want that opportunity to be able to ask questions. We have a couple different formats that have worked really, really well that you can do it anonymously. And it's that natural conversation that evolves. And we haven't been gifted that. So we are relying on more traditional ways, I guess. And you do have to be more creative. Like one of the examples in the facilitator and the resiliency training was, you're trying to think of A, B, and C from a not-for-profit standpoint. And now you're like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it keeps on going because you're worried about, all of those things. How are you going to get the resources to those that need it? How do you identify that? How do you do it if you can't actually go to your entire territory with limited resources? So I think it's really important to we're going to do the best we can. And I know from our perspective, we're not going to put success on numbers. If we can reach, 1 or 5, 10 people, we're going to have to take that as a win because we're hopefully having a positive impact on that. And word of mouth is going to be able to kind of to spread that and build capacity. So that's our wish for sure.
Absolutely. How about you, Susan? How do you feel? Do you feel there's work to be done in terms of letting people know that you're there and what the resources are that you have available?
Yeah, absolutely there is. So often I think people think the Canadian mental health is about sort of those people. And we are, I guess. We certainly support people who are very impacted by mental health concerns. But we're also here for average, everyday people. Maybe you have a question about how what is a warning sign? Who could I reach out to? We do a lot of referral, a lot of navigational support and services. Our community outreach worker, that's probably what she does the majority of the time. And or also just loneliness is so interesting what Stacey was saying, because loneliness is so damaging to mental health and isolation. And yet, how do we navigate that in this virtual world? Like, look at us. I was looking forward to being at the Hive. I've never been in there, and here we are, in our offices later at night, trying to connect. But we do what we have to do. But it's that face on. You see all my body language. I see yours. I can do attending behaviors, as they call it, and in communication courses. And without that, and that shows that I'm empathetic and I care, and we're able to have a very deep and meaningful conversation. But it's hard over the computer to have that same kind of level of intimacy that it ends up being helpful to people. Yeah, we're always trying to spread the word. In fact, the one thing about the building, we said, yes, we need a new space, but we also want to create awareness. And those were our two goals. Kind of went hand in hand. But yeah, so we are here. If people have any kind of question at all, we can support that. But yeah, hopefully they do reach out.
And what
I think the benefit is, you're just collaborating. I think that's the bigger thing, right? You're not relying on just your reach, but by doing events like this, that it went on both of our social media pages. So you're doubling the opportunity to get word out. And I think that's a big piece of it too.
And I like that you say, Susan, that you can be a springboard too, because people might think, is this the right place to reach out to? Maybe it's not. But as long as people know that there's somebody there that can at least point them in the right direction, that's key. And Cindy asked a great question in the comments, because of course we have sort of compounded grief. I'm not going to read the whole comment, but I will read the question. Can you talk a bit about what signs we should be looking for that indicate that you may need to reach out for some help with how you are feeling?
Good question.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Susan?
Well, I guess when, it's hard not to personally reflect on this when talking about things that are hard. Probably when, your sleep gets affected, you're finding that you can't, like I said, trying things 3 times, and then the 4th time it's not working, and you're still feeling the same. Absolutely. You find one of the things that I find in my work here is that when you see conflict in relationships, so often we take out our feelings on people that we love, or, things get turned into anger. And you find yourself that there's conflicts in the relationship, and you're not showing up the way that you need to show up or want to show up. And that to me is a big sign. I mean, without supportive relationships, we're in a lot of trouble. And so if those are getting impacted, something needs to be addressed there, I think. So that's probably a warning sign. Just sort of maybe physical, how you're physically feeling as well. Lethargy, hopelessness, despair, hard to find the silver lining in things. I mean, particularly if you're a person that is like that. So I try to, usually after a little bit, I can find the silver lining, or I can turn it around, go from like a scarcity to, it's enough situation. But if that's not working, which is exactly what I was experiencing last week, if that's not enough, then I should reach out to somebody and talk to them. So thankfully, I have a very supportive husband and family, so I can do that.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing, from like an organizational standpoint, I think it's really important to understand what the other organizations do, because and it's not just from a professional standpoint, it's also personal. Like as you interact with folks and you notice that there's a difference in how they're showing up, that you're able to at least, do everything you can to say, hey, if you ever need it. And both of us have resources online, so you don't actually have to talk to us if you don't want to. You can go online. You can download it as a PDF. You can read through it, and at least if something resonates with you that you feel that you need a little bit more, then that opportunity's there, and build your network. I'm sure Susan can attest, our referrals are coming from really strange places. We've had an increase in physician referrals because we're more involved in the schools now with the partnership there. You've had, guidance counselors reach out, and just, I think if there is a silver lining through all of this, I think it's people are understanding and open to reaching out to support others. So we've got, school, we've got, parents that are looking for resources to help support their children through all of that. We've got, I think families are untraditional now in a lot of cases. So you need to be sensitive to, really understanding what those dynamics are and to best serve. So I think it's all of those things that you just have to give as much information as you can and be really open to listening and watching and trying to identify with your own networks to make sure that they stay, safe and healthy, and do what you can to support them as well.
Yeah, I mean, and as you guys are saying this too, I always I'm thinking about, and back to Cindy's question as well, is, when you're trying to see clues or hints or signs in other people, right, is to see when they need help, and there's always that fine line of how best to point somebody in that direction if they're not in a place where they recognize it in themselves, right? If you see somebody spiraling and they should probably reach out to someone, how do you manage that situation as well?
It's a very loving act when you do that. It's almost like you have to tap into a vulnerable side of yourself as well. But it's a loving act, but it's very difficult because sometimes people they can't hear the words because of the space that they're in. And you understand that and make space for that too. But then of course there's some bottom lines as an organization that you have to try to maintain. And it gets difficult trying to juggle those two things sometimes. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's why I think if you try to support those that recognize those and who are closer to that person, I think that's just as important, because if they don't recognize and you don't get that self-referral, or just try to make sure that others can access it to help support on their behalf until they're ready or willing to reach out on their own to get that additional support that's available. So.
I mean, one, again, silver lining of this whole thing is that people are recognizing the fact that mental health is important. And so I think people are doing things that support good mental health without even maybe realizing they're doing it. Like the amount of people outside that you see now, like the Cobequid Trail is so busy. I'd like to go down there, but only when I'm by myself. But every time I go peek over the hill, because I live very near it, there's a lot of people. And I'm like, bravo, because people are taking small measures to take care of their mental health. And you see people talking and walking in twos, obviously their family groups, that kind of stuff. But it has highlighted the importance of mental health for all of us and how we should be taking care of it on a daily basis. And we typically don't do that. And I think it's also highlighted grief too, Stacey, Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I respect and appreciate is people are showing more vulnerability. They're like, you know what, I know I have the tools to manage this, and I'm speaking personally too. I'm like, I got all kinds in my toolbox, and man, some days it's hard to get out of bed. And Jason can attest, it's like you come home and you're just drained because you take all this heaviness, right? That you don't even want to talk. And I think, from a leadership standpoint, from a friend standpoint, from a family standpoint, I think you have to be upfront and honest and kind of share some of that vulnerability. And I think that's, I noticed in one of the comments, it's family and friends and it's people, and I think it is because people are grieving that. I often think I'm an introvert, but if I was an extrovert, I try to put myself in an extrovert's shoes through all of this, and it has got to be so difficult. And I think that's important to recognize, and again, just reach out.
And people are grieving the loss of that social connection that
and
I've said it before too, where it's like they're not even necessarily thinking that's grief, because you often associate grief with death, right? But we're all have been for the last over a year now dealing with the loss of so many things in our lives, the schedules, the routines, all of that stuff. So grief is looped into all of that. And to your point, Stacey, Dottie, I hope I pronounced your name right, was talking about the connection with family and friends and how it's important to call people, and how we often don't do that anymore. and how, hearing the tone of somebody's voice can make a difference in terms of hearing if they're struggling or might need some help. So picking up the phone and calling instead of texting is really important. And Amy,
and even handwritten notes too, right?
I was going to say that. Yeah. Didn't Canada Post do something, a little campaign earlier this year? I just thought that was so cool because you're right. We don't do handwritten notes or thank yous anymore. And they're so nice to get in the mail.
Who doesn't love getting mail, like a card
Right.
or a letter that just says thinking of you or whatever it says? Yeah, that's so.
I mean, they really are. They have to go buy the card, fill it in, dress it, take it to the post, get a stamp. They really are thinking of you.
Yeah.
But it's such a nice gesture. Yeah.
And Amy asked a great question. What can you expect? Like, what is the experience when they call your organizations? Because maybe that might keep people from calling, kind of the unknown around that. So, Stacey, do you want to go first on that one?
Sure. We are in the office, although our building is closed to the public. So I would just encourage folks to reach out to questions, email at cehhospice.org or call us directly at 902-893-3265. We're going to be here. We aren't doing face-to-face now, but we'll do our best. It can be a phone call. We've got a capacity to do Zoom calls, and really do our best to come up with a plan that's going to work for that person, because we know comfort levels are different. But we're going to do everything we can right now. Our two social workers we have, I shouldn't say divided, that's not it, but one specializes specifically in children and youth and one in more adult situations. And they do come together for a family model, but for the most part, we'll get that information. We'll get as much information as you're comfortable sharing. And then it'll go to our social workers and they'll reach out directly. So you don't really have to share your same story twice. And the social workers will reach out and set up a time that works best. And like I said, we just want it to be safe and accessible, and we'll do what we can. And as public health restrictions, we'll get back to hopefully that face-to-face contact, and we'll move forward. But everything we do is very, very normal when it comes to grief. So if you do just want to talk, then please reach out and we'll do what we can.
Awesome. That's great. And Susan, for you guys, what can they expect in terms of when they call CMHA, for example, or should they call or email or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're very similar to Stacey right now. We're not open to walking in the building because of COVID, of course, but we will be. We'll get back there again, but we can meet with you in the parking lot if it's a nice enough day. We were trying to figure out a canopy and umbrellas and all different kinds of things, but what would happen is you could call 895-4211 and ask for a community outreach worker. I believe it's extension 1, the outreach program, and that our outreach worker, Cindy Reed, she will speak with you and find out what it is you're looking for. And it could be a variety of things, and sometimes it's just to talk, and that's okay, because that's an important part of what she does is she goes out into community. Right now she visits on decks or steps or in yards. She has a couple of chairs she takes along with her, so she can pop up seating wherever she goes, but just to sit and talk with people. And then maybe you find out in that conversation that that person is struggling with food, or they are missing somebody particularly, or maybe they don't have any cell phone minutes anymore and they can't call their family. So they can see things that we could, or their medication, right? So we can line things up and provide some financial assistance for some of those things to get that person back on track. It's an easy thing to buy some cell minutes for somebody, and through a grant that we have right now, and they can then reconnect. So it's simple things like that sometimes that have great meaning for people. And then of course, if there's a referral, it's just, again, simple conversation, referral to somebody that we feel in the community who could do a better job, then we will absolutely refer them to them. And in non-COVID days, we would actually physically accompany that person over to the other resource, because it's nice to, have company. And, if you're going into a place that you're a little bit nervous about or strange. So, but anyway, again, we'll get back to that. But yeah, so that's pretty well what you could expect. We have a huge variety of programs, everything from, acupuncture, we used to have that, but support groups to, again, food security, to artworks programs. Basically, our programs focus around employment, recreation, and social experiences. So, we will again assess that person and suggest some things, and if they're interested, we can very easily plug them in. And I know, Stacey, everything's free of charge, and you don't have to have a diagnosis. We used to be concerned about that. If you feel you may have an issue, that's enough of a diagnosis for us. And come on in, give us a call, and we can help with whatever you think may be needing. Yeah.
And I think it's really important to know that if you're unsure, is it grief I'm dealing with, or is it, do I need to, is it something more serious? I think both the teams, and Susan, I don't want to speak on behalf of yours, but I know our team, call, and if it is outside of our scope, we're not going to say, you're left on your own devices to try to figure it out. We'll do the best we can. And I think collaboratively as both teams, we have enough experience in different areas that if it's something that doesn't belong with us, we're going to help you find out where to go to be best served. And I think, again, it comes back to that collaboration and getting to know the organizations and working together, that you're always going to have the best interest. I mean, obviously our own organizations to a certain extent, but the only reason we're here is to serve clients. So in our community, so we're always going to do what we can to make sure that happens.
Yeah. And that goes to Susan's point, or Susan Sharpeggy's point in the comments. She said it takes courage, and it's an act of self-care to ask for help. And so, of course, the courage to call hospice, and then hospice says, "Meh, we're going to pass you off to somebody else." But I think, honestly, I'm glad you guys are saying this, because it's important that you'll help and you'll walk them through the next stages to get them to the right person in a good way, right? So, because that can be very daunting, obviously, to make that first call. So
terrifying, I think, for some people, because you're admitting something that you maybe haven't even really admitted to yourself yet, and again, there's no shame in it. Yeah. You
might not even know what the root of that is. You might not know if you're stressing because your minutes are run out on your cell phone, but you'll find that out in the course of that conversation, right? And so it's so important. And I just want to thank Amanda Doucette for commenting. I know basically agreeing with us that she's also been struggling a lot. There's been lots of death and loss in her life, and we're sorry to hear that, Amanda. And just hanging in there and helping each other when you can. And Sylvia reiterates, calling a friend, just sending one note to say hello can sometimes be all that it takes to start a good conversation.
Yeah. It's simple things, right? I mean, when you prepare for some of these conversations like we're having tonight, you want to come up with this wonderful, wonderful, magical thing that works for people. It's like eureka, but it's just the simple things that we know already. Yeah.
And I think another piece to COVID, and a silver lining, if you call it that, people are, for the most part, when it comes to situations like this, far more forgiving. If you don't have an answer, or, you're not doing, the face-to-face, I think people are more understanding and are more grateful. I mean, it's not always the case, but I think we're blessed in these two organizations to see a lot of that. And when people are reaching out and showing up, and I mean, we probably feel worse not being able to give them exactly what they want, but we're happy to try to make a version of it that's going to work for them. And for me, I think that's one of the things that's getting me through, is they are grateful and forgiving, and just appreciating the fact that we're trying to figure it out as we go through. So I think, again, it's nice to see, because you're seeing all other kinds of negative in humanity these days. That when you see that, you have to be grateful for it, and it makes you work harder, at least from, I think, our perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think that comes back to your comment about vulnerability too, Stacey, because I think we're seeing vulnerability in individuals, but I think we're also seeing vulnerability in organizations and businesses and all of those things. So once you start to see kind of the real people behind the organization, I think that helps for people to be able to make those connections and reach out. It makes it easier to reach out when you know the person and you know that they're a real person. They're not just somebody who's gonna, go through the motions.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting about vulnerability? Because we're also afraid to kind of show a piece of who we are, let that door slide back, and because we're also worried that we'll be judged and that people won't like us as much anymore or something like that. But yet when you do that, like you say, Sam, the connections are deeper, they're more meaningful, people get more out of it. It's just so interesting. And whether that's an individual or an organization or even a community, I think when we start sharing how we're really feeling, we do grow together as a community and try to figure out how we can help each other.
And I love it's Mental Health Week. It's Hospice Palliative Care Week, and I love the CMHA slogan for this week, which is "Get real about how you feel." It's so plain language, and everybody gets it. It's like no sugarcoating anything. It's just get real. I love it.
Yeah, and name it, don't numb it. Alcohol, distraction activities, whether that be gambling, shopping online, alcohol, cannabis, they've certainly increased in this time. And people are trying to soothe themselves at home. We see that. And again, it gets difficult, but it's important to reach out.
Yeah, for sure. So flipping a little bit to some of the stuff. So Susan, because it's Mental Health Week, do you want to plug our event tomorrow evening?
Sure, you can help me out. We are just thrilled to have for our second annual men's tall, because we tried to do it last year and COVID got in the way. So it's sort of our third year thinking about it, but our second year actually doing something. We have a virtual event planned with Theo Fleury, and he has a Me Too presentation that he talks about his journey and his struggle and really his rising from the ashes personally and professionally that we're really excited to hear about. So we've received some sponsorship from CIBC Wood Gundy, which we were so thrilled with. We're really looking forward to it. We have James Faulkner emceeing for us as usual. There's this picture, I was thinking, we're trying to do things virtually. And the last time I did it, we had a picture of us in front of the marigold. I think I came up to sort of his kneecaps. Anyway, it's one of my favorite pictures of James and I. He's such a wonderful man. And so he's going to be emceeing it for us. And we have some introductions from our board, or welcome from our board chair, Tom Taggart, and then introduction from a representative of CIBC Wood Gundy. So how'd I do, Sam? Did I cover it all?
You did really well. And I think the cool thing about having Theo Fleury, I think, is that he's a recognizable name, and a lot of people know him from the hockey world, and a lot of people also know him from his advocacy in terms of addiction and sexual abuse. And I think just having somebody, again, he's going to get real, and I think that's a good connection for what tomorrow night's going to be. And it's free for people to watch. You just have to join a private Facebook group on the CMHA page, and once you join that group, we'll approve you joining, and you can watch it tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. And we can put a link. I'll add a link into this stream in a little bit.
Wonderful.
So people can join that group and hopefully watch us tomorrow night.
What are you doing anyway, right?
Right? Exactly. So that's kind of capping off, I guess, because we did have some in-person events that you were going to do, but of course with COVID, this is kind of the big one is tomorrow night online.
It is. Yeah, it had boiled down to that. We had to cancel many things that we were going to do, but again, we'll just hold on to them for next year. Hopefully we'll be in a different space. And yeah.
Absolutely. And Stacey, for you, I know bucket list lotto season is on right now at Hospice. Hey, do you want to?
Sure. See, this is the benefit about having Sam kind of help support both organizations on the background. She kind of knows the ins and outs, so just making sure we
cover it all. We don't miss anything.
Obviously, every organization and business had some struggles. So our bucket list lotto, which is a new version, this will be the second year of our lotto. We'll start in July, and tickets are on sale now. And our tickets, we are selling 1,000 tickets this year for 26,000 or 26 chances of winning $1,000. Starting from in July, going till June. The cost of the ticket is $50. If you win once, your name goes back in, so you can certainly have an opportunity to win again. And we have had that happen this year. It's a huge fundraiser for us, and obviously it's one of the easier ones because we are able to do it in-house by phone and email. So it is an important piece. And not only from a financial standpoint, but just awareness. So if you haven't and you'd like one, please reach out, and we're happy to get you one in your hands. And like I said, for those that have supported us last year, just a huge thank you, because you played a huge part in making sure that we were able to deliver services this past year and moving forward. So much appreciated from our team and board of directors for sure.
It's really cool. To win $1,000, that's pretty awesome. And, you pay it all up front, so you don't have to worry about it in between. And it's a really cool initiative, and they sold out last year. So you're going to want to get your ticket soon if you want to get involved, because they may run out again. They probably will run out again.
That would be awesome. That's the goal.
Be a great problem to have, right, Stacey?
It absolutely is. That's the goal.
That is one impact too of COVID, is the lack of in-person events has had an impact on all of our fundraising. So it's super helpful to have support like that. That's for sure.
And on that note, Susan, because I realized I said, it's free to donate. It is absolutely free to watch. But
sorry, that wasn't a plug.
We are also asking folks for donations.
If they can, yes.
Well. And for anybody watching, I'm wearing 3 hats here tonight. So that's why I know so much about these events, as Stacey said. So, but I'm really excited for tomorrow night. I'm excited for Theo, and James, of course, has been a huge supporter of CMHA over the years. James also, by the way, did a photo shoot with Alicia on Star Wars Day. I don't know if you guys have seen it. There is a photo of Chewbacca and Princess Leia at Civic Square. If you haven't seen it, you need to go back and look in the Trobas photos.
It's perfect.
And if you didn't know it was James, it's James. I mean, he's just so awesome. I messaged him like a week out and I was like, hey, James, want to do a Chewy photo with Alicia? He's like, yeah, sure.
He loves that excuse to put that costume on. And he's so good in it. We were doing the book fair one year at the mall, and with the Kinsman, I think it was last year anyway, we were allowed to do all that stuff. And he was there doing just a photo shoot with the kids and stuff at the mall. And he rocks it. There's just no other way to do it. Yeah.
Yes. He's so great. I love it. So, and yes,
really is. And it's fantastic that he's going to do the emceeing for that, because, again, it's important from a male perspective, because we, all the things that we've been talking about here tonight about, holding on to feelings and not talking and stick. I think they're doubled with some, with men. Men have not been taught traditionally to express their feelings. It's a sign of weakness. And so it's even more important. I mean, I remember, Women in Wellness, the early days of that. I really feel proud that, the people we've had there and the synergy that is created in that room and also in our community, that it's created an environment that's easier to talk about mental health. So let's hope that has that same effect on the men in our community.
Yes, exactly. And grow it from exactly that, Susan. You said it perfectly, because, this is only the second time we've done it. And so the goal obviously is to grow that each year and get more conversations happening specifically around men's mental health. So yes, very
absolutely.
Cool. Stacey, I'm going to go back to something you said earlier. We talked about the fight, flight, or freeze, and I just kind of want to get your guys' thoughts after doing that resiliency workshop on, say you're in freeze, like where do you go from there? Because I think a lot of people are there right now. I know I personally am, and it's kind of a little bit paralyzing and scary. Where do you go from there when you recognize, okay, I'm in freeze mode here?
I think the thing that I appreciated the most was I come from a very different background, that you had networks that you all did the same thing. And in not-for-profit, I don't find that the same. So one of the provincial organizations, I think, did an amazing job and identified that there wasn't that opportunity for EDs, specifically in the not-for-profit sector. And they talked about resiliency and burnout. And I think, talk about vulnerability, because we have teams that we want to be show an example and make sure that they feel supported. But each of us reports to a board of directors that you want to make sure that they're comfortable with the direction of the organization. So you're kind of in this flux that you feel you have to be on all the time, and to be able to get on that call with all EDs, and they did an incredible job at the breakout sessions and kind of what those questions were. And I think when you do recognize the freeze, I think you're no different than anybody else, no matter what role you have. And I think all the suggestions that we talked about, it is reaching out, it's being open and just say, you know what, this is not a great week. It's heavy. And I think when you reach out to your network, and specifically if you are in this sector, I think there's an amazing support system and I consider Susan one, that you're able to reach out and there's an understanding and there's no judgment, and it's just you have that sounding board that, you know what, you get off the call or you get out of the conversation and you're like, okay, it's just a bit of a, we're all in it together, and I think that's what I need to bring myself out of that freeze mode. And it happens a lot, probably every other day these days. And you just need that little bit of a reset. And for me, it's recognizing it and reaching out to the network and motor on, because you got important work to do. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really key, reaching out for sure. Susan, anything to add to that from your perspective?
I remember, well, I spoke about this, that you had the Women's Social Network, and thank goodness you did. We could squeeze that in before we were shut down again. But, I shared about feeling, it was interesting because I think the question you asked of us, the panel, was something about the biggest weakness or the biggest thing you were concerned about. And I shared that I was worried about myself, because I want to show up, as Stacey's saying, I want to show up as a leader. I want to show up as somebody that my staff can rely on, and they can feel comfortable that we're forging through this really scary forest we've not been ever here before. We're feeling a little lost, and that I'm going to lead them through that successfully. There's a lot of pressure. And I worried about my ability to do that and maintain my mental health and be positive and, and maintain all the relationships, like Stacey was saying about, your home stuff. You don't want your home stuff to go down the tubes while you're, anyway, so recognizing that is really helpful for me in the freeze mode. I guess giving the compassion to myself that I naturally give to my staff and to my friends and my colleagues. As Stacey's saying, I know she's a wonderful sounding board for me, and you too, Sam. We're very fortunate in this community. We have a wonderful network of, and probably half the people on the chat. I could reach out to them as well and say, I really need to talk to you, and they would truly be there for me. So it's recognizing, being compassionate. For me, it's being compassionate with myself and recognizing that I don't have all the answers, and it's okay to show up at kind of a hot mess some days and cry, and to ask for help and ask for, trying not to cry too much, by the way, but try to ask my team what they think. And where we should go with things if I need to do that. So, and we've done that, and the earth has not cracked in half. It's actually been pretty good. And you do feel more of a connection. I think we talk about vulnerability, you let go of that idea of who you think you're supposed to be. I think it just gets easier all around. You discover things about yourself, and you discover things about your staff that you didn't realize they had the capacity and the skill set potentially to do. And it only builds your team. Yeah.
And I think that's something to be proud of too. Like the way our team has shown up,
fantastic. Yeah.
I unbelievable. And to be able to see that, I think is only going to make us stronger on the other side as well. So yeah, really proud of the team and the community and the group that's come together. And I think you're right. I think I'm just doing a quick scan of the names, and there's only a few there that I don't know and haven't spoken with, and just a great opportunity to say thank you very much, because they've been supportive about us personally and our organizations, and even taking time tonight. I think it's really important and much appreciated from our perspective.
Yes, I echo that.
A little plug from Trisha there, Susan. I don't know if you can see the comment. It's great having a supportive leader that's not scared to be real.
Thank you, Trisha. She's also one of my backbones here. So absolutely. She's seen me pretty real some days, that's for sure. But I just think that's important, because again, it just encourages other people to be able to touch those feelings as well, because we're all just doing the best we can. And it's scary. It's scary. And yeah. And then I think when you do that too, like, you can also laugh together and enjoy the other emotions together, rather than just the fear and the worry.
Yeah, that's right. And hey, I'm going to do a shameless plug, Susan Sharpeggy, because you asked for it. I'm assuming you're talking about my new little book. Joey, my husband, and I just wrote another book, our third kids book, illustrated by Amanda Bent, our friend, and this one is on pre-sale right now. So it's about anxiety, and we're partnering with the CMHA to, well, not really partnering, but we're going to give 15% of proceeds for all pre-sales to our local CMHA. So
Thank you.
we're really excited. And actually, I can announce right now that we started to just do it during the week for Mental Health Week, but we're actually going to extend that for the whole month of May.
Oh, thank you, Sam. Thank you.
So
yeah.
And not only that, but this trio has also supported with Hank's Ball as well to hospice. So I think just having that resource available, supporting local, and they're reciprocating by supporting the organization. So yeah.
And think about all the fantastic conversations that are happening with children. You know, I always say youth are going to save us, but you know, they're growing up with the idea that it's okay to talk about how you're really feeling. And if you're scared, you tell that, or if you're anxious, you say that, and you get support. Like, it's wonderful. So be very, very proud of those conversations that you're generating and, you know, in people's homes.
thank you.
Yeah, and
But we're
contributing
not biased or anything.
I know.
But you're contributing to the emotional well-being of our community. Truly, you are, Sam. Yeah, in a wonderful way.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, Alicia, I just shamelessly plugged myself. Supporting our children who can't always articulate how they feel. Yeah, it's totally
exactly.
True. Yeah.
And also parents who don't know how to start those conversations. It gives them a catalyst to jump right into that stuff.
Totally. Yeah. Well, ladies, thank you so much. I feel like I could have had this conversation for another 2 hours, but I know that you guys probably don't have that in you tonight. I started off feeling a bit exhausted, and now I feel a bit better after having this conversation. So I think that just proves what we were already talking about, which is starting those conversations can really help you feel better.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody wants to start the conversation with me, just give me a call.
You know.
Yes, I love it.
Graciously accept that call.
That's great. Thanks a lot, you guys. And
thank you for the opportunity.
Hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow night at Walk Tall for CMHA.
Awesome.